Welcome back to Trash and Recycling 2018 in Vermont. In part one, you may remember that this guy, Trevor Mance, took us through the recycling industry piece by piece and told us how the market is right now for this stuff. In part two today, he's going to tell us what happened to this market and is it ever coming back? And he's also going to spend some quality time talking about this, trash, the stuff nobody in the world wants. There is a looming trash crisis about to hit Vermont, and I won't give too much away, but there's some things on the horizon that we as Vermonters are really going to have some heavy discussions about. China. So my understanding is that at one point China was really great for recycling in America, and something happened. Recently, in fact.
Well, lots of things have happened, and China is an interesting. They were what saved recycling for a long time. They propped it up, and now they're kind of, I don't want to say the demise, it's the demise of the commodity pricing is based on China. They were importing about 33 million tons of recycled fiber. The next biggest was India at 9.7 million tons.
Wow.
So it is
we really need
infinitely
them.
more than anybody else. So we really do need them. So what happened is the economy kind of grew to a certain point, and then it started to level out. The economic growth was not sustained for a huge period of time. And then what happened was they started to produce their own recycling. So while their demand is still there for the product, they just have their own curbside recycling programs going now. They're generating their own material, so they don't need to buy the United States material. So they went from mixed paper, 6.6 million tons last year alone, down to 0. They literally,
wow.
It was called National Sword,
Yeah.
and they literally chopped off the imports in 2018, and to date, I don't think that they have received any from the United States. So it was a financial cliff that all of the fibers just fell off. Because obviously American domestic mills are going to follow suit. They're not going to continue to pay what China was paying. They're not going to compete or overpay. They're just going to be at the same level. So all pricing slumped.
So Trevor, we still are producing all that trash. So is it just sitting on our shores with no place to go?
So it's recyclables. And yes, to some degree, it is being stockpiled. I know of haulers that have warehouses full of baled material in hopes that this is a short blip and that something will happen.
What do you think?
I'm nervous because the underlying issue here is that China just doesn't need our stuff. They said that in the National Sword, they said, we don't want your contaminated material. So they said, hey, look, you guys are sending us junk. We want a 0.5% contamination rate. So for every 100 pounds, you can only have a half a pound of contamination in a bale.
Wow.
And so that was functionally impossible. But the underlying issue is that they are increasing their environmental standards. They are doing more recycling there. They're trying to clean up their air pollution. They're trying to clean up all these things, and they just simply are creating a true competition to us in that they're recycling their own fibers. So it's not a short-term economic issue, it's a long-term, they just don't need us. And so we have to figure out where that, either the next China is, whether it be India starts to purchase more, and they do percentage-wise, they're up 25% almost year over year, but it's 25% of this much versus that much that China used to take. So we're in trouble for a while on fibers. One thing I'll say is that we're resilient in the waste industry, and we will figure out how to manage that material. It will not go into a landfill. It will go into other places. So positive side. Negative side is this has a cost, and Vermonters are bearing that cost. Prices are going up because the value's not there.
I'm just curious, like, what's going to stop America from just saying our taxes are too high, the heck with this?
I struggle with that. And there's always going to be examples out there. You take a state in the center of the country, and they're looking at an extremely high transportation cost to get it to a port, a high shipping cost to get it overseas, and then a bill at the end of that. So it's hard for somebody to justify all that expense when you have really inexpensive landfill rates in places where a lot of land is. So the center of the country is very cheap. Ohio is very cheap. Right. So you're going to see some of that just go to disposal. The Northeast has the highest landfill rates of any part of the country because we're land poor. We just don't have big setbacks to potential neighbors. And so our landfills are way out, far, far away. We've got one landfill in the state of Vermont on the border. So transportation.
You only have one left?
We have one landfill left, correct. It's on the edge of Lake Memphremagog. It's right on the Canadian border. So it's a long haul for us to drive things up there. The other alternatives are Clinton County, New York, up near Plattsburgh, Franklin County, way out in the Adirondacks. So the common denominator is you need big setbacks to potentially impacted people, and the Northeast is so compact.
Now that you've said we only have one landfill, what goes through my mind is there will be a day when the landfill is officially done, and we're not going to dig a big hole somewhere in Vermont. Do you ever see a battle out there where states say, you know, we only have 2 landfills, and that's all we're going to get. You're not sending our trash. Do you see a time when Vermont is sitting there with trash that they can't send anywhere?
Yes, I do. And the landfill problem it's a regional problem. And we are, as much as we're talking globally now on the recycling markets, we should talk about regionally on the landfill. And so in recent history, we have Southbridge landfill that's closing. We have Chicopee landfill that's closing en masse. We had Claremont, New Hampshire incinerator close. And we have limited capacity at many of the, Albany landfill is closing in another year. Wow. So just those closures is about 1.2, 1.4 million tons of waste capacity per year that's now gone. So the remaining landfills are certainly, they are, and they're just, the pricing is going through the roof. And it's a supply and demand thing. We have less landfill supply, and we have much higher demand because not only is there closures, but the economy is doing well. So construction debris is really coming up. Garbage volumes always mirror economic activity. The more money we have, the more we consume. The consumables turn into garbage, and then we throw them away. Gotcha. So it is a landfill crunch that is of mammoth proportions.
Is Vermont getting pushed from other states to take their trash?
Vermont has a law that outlaws out-of-state waste to be buried in-state.
So that's the future of America.
And that is the scary thing, because Vermont has that law. New York does not have that law yet. Massachusetts does not have that law yet. So as we have filled our available landfill, right, we're going to be going to someplace else. And we're seeing it right now. The biggest landfill in the Northeast is Seneca Meadows. They do 6,000 tons per day of waste.
Oh my God.
The residents of Seneca Falls, New York, have thrown up their hands and say no more. The protesters are out there with the picket signs. Right. They're scheduling to close that landfill in 2025. They're pushing really hard, and there's a lot of traction. If that comes offline, that takes garbage from all of the Northeast. So 6,000 tons per day, that's over 1 million tons a year in that one landfill, is now going to be gone.
Vermont's landfill, when does that kick out of use? Do you have a sense
They
of
just got an expansion that I believe, and I
sure.
think it's about 10-year expansion. So somewhere around 10 years, we're going to be in the same situation.
Is Vermont right now trying very quietly to send as much trash as it can to other states so we don't wipe out our landfill so fast? Is that hard to say?
It's hard to say.
It's hard to say, but it'd be smart. I can say that.
Yes, you can say that.
It would be smart. So at some point, things are going to happen, which is we're going to keep trying to pawn off our trash. Mm-hmm. Some states may take it. Mm-hmm. A lot of states may say no. Mm-hmm. We got all the trash we need, just like China.
Yes.
And then our landfill is going to fill up. So somewhere in 20-something, mm-hmm, as a state, everyone's going to be talking about what do we do with our recyclables, and what do we do with all the other trash that's left over? And you're saying that the solution is not really there yet. The things are happening, but
Right.
we don't have anywhere to go yet.
It's true. The two trains are coming down the same track. and right now we have that perfect storm of less capacity, slumped recycling markets. How do we move forward from here? And I don't know what the answer is going to be. I do know that as prices rise in the disposal world, which they're rising drastically, it will spur other options. Things that were not economically viable before will become economically viable. One tangible thing that TAM is looking at is our rail spur. The next horizon is Ohio. Ohio and Virginia are very trash import friendly. So Ohio is becoming the dumping grounds of many, many states.
I can see that turning into such a political issue.
Absolutely.
Because at some point, they're going to get hit with the country's trash.
Yes. So, and then that will change, and then we could be sitting here in 5 years and saying, the train's almost in Nevada. That's the new frontier, and all of this to say that it is getting more expensive, and that's worrisome.
Right.
The Europeans are all sitting here laughing and saying, you guys are 15 years behind us. They have these refuse-derived fuel places. They have the ability to take plastics and break them down into their components and make fuel out of them. So we could be burning that in our trucks. They don't have any land. And so it's more expensive, but they deal with it differently. And that's where we're headed. We're headed towards a more European model. There's going to be a paradigm shift, and while I am scared as heck about what that is going to be, and it does keep me up at night, and I do worry about how we're going to make that shift, I am optimistic that shift is going to be for better of many things. It's going to be less landfills, it's going to be less pollution in the end, and it's going to be an economic driver. TAM has grown because of these recycling laws. That we've grown because of the organics. We now have 60 employees. I would say that 20 of them are based on this paradigm shifting towards more, we don't call it garbage, we call it material management. We're going to turn garbage into its components of materials, and then we have to focus in on how to process each one differently. So yes, costs go up, but the upside is that it's going to be our new economy, and it's going to be something that's going to be better, I think, in the end.